Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly nostalgia podcast about the best of technology and culture from the mid-20th century.
Welcome back to Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the best of the mid-20th century and how to add vintage vibes to your modern life. We're your hosts, Jackie
and Gonzalo. Thank you for joining us today. So today we're talking about my favorite cartoon from when I was little, which is actually a cartoon from mid-century. But first, and we'll find out what that is later. But first, Jackie, how was your week?
My week was great. I mentioned it was warming up slightly last week, and now that I've defrosted, I'm finally being productive again. So I decided to channel my continuing obsession with Wicked into a mid-century lunch party, kind of like a Galentine's Day style luncheon thing. So basically, I was flipping through one of my vintage cookbooks, and I found this recipe for cookies where you just like make one base dough and you can split it into pieces and use different food colorings and flavorings to make two different cookies, and they came in pink and green. And I was like, pink and green, like Glinda and Elphaba. I wonder how many other pink and green vintage foods I can find. And I managed to put together an entire lunch menu inspired by like just pink and green foodstuffs.
Nice.
And so I invited friends over to help me eat it, and it was really fun. And I haven't edited the pictures yet, but we'll share that on the internet, and we'll share some of that in our stories whenever this episode comes out so you guys can see. But it was fun to channel that obsession into my also weird obsession with vintage cookbooks. So that was a very fun and productive.
It's like a crossover episode.
Yeah, it was like a crossover episode.
Which we'll talk about later on in today's episode, too.
But since we're all about vintage vibes in your modern life, that's basically what it was. It was like a vintage menu with a modern bit of entertainment like mixed together, and it was fun. It was a good time.
Nice.
So that's what I did this week. How was your week?
So to carry on with the thawing of the winter, we have entered what has been described by some as false spring.
Love it.
And yes, it is great. I mean, I love the winter, I love the snow, but also like we had really crappy weather all week long, and then yesterday the sun's come out and it's cold in the mornings, but it gets into the 60s in the afternoon. So like 40s, 50s in the morning and 60s in the afternoon, which I get it for those of you not in Texas, that's not cold. But it's been so nice that yesterday I took the roof and the doors off the Jeep so that I could drive around very scarily, because it's kind of scary to drive around without doors. But this morning when I woke up, I go, oh man, I don't really feel like making breakfast. And I remember I had a gift card to Dunkin'. So I went to Dunkin' and I got a cup of coffee, which good coffee, nah, but free coffee, yay. Anyways, I got out of the garage thinking it was in the 60s, and it was not. It was in the 40s. Thankfully, I was wearing a hoodie, so I put my hood on, and I blasted the heater off the Jeep, which, by the way, the Jeeps have a really great heater. So I was comfortable, and then I was singing along to the Mamas and the Papas.
That sounds like a lovely fake spring morning.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. So
I love that you were like, yep, it's over 50, I'm taking the doors off.
Well, here's the thing. In this area of the country, we only have so many days where it's comfortable enough to not have doors on the Jeep, because very quickly it's going to be too humid. And then not only, it's uncomfortable when you're standstill. When you're driving, you get air and it's fine. But the humidity makes the steering wheel sticky.
Oh, gross.
So that's really the downside of it.
Yeah, spring, I think, is my favorite season of the year. The whole 2 weeks we get of it. So I'm appreciate, like, it's just like, it's not really humid yet. It's not too hot and it's not too cold.
Yes.
But we get like 2, maybe 3 weeks where the weather's just like perfect.
Yes.
And so I'm glad we get a little bonus week this week with our fake spring.
Yeah.
False spring.
I will say I love the look of the Jeep without the doors. One drawback is that when you remove the front doors, you also remove the wing mirrors because they're mounted on the doors.
So do you just have to stick your head out?
Well, you can, but I have mirrors that attach to the Jeep.
Oh, neat.
But they're obviously they're manuals. They're not like my door mirrors where you push a button and it fixes them. So like you have to sit and like I felt very like 1990s, like having to like lean over to the side to like fix the mirror and then sit back, like no, it's not right, and lean over and fix it. And then the passenger side wing mirror stays fine. The driver's side wing mirror, when the car's on and it trembles a little bit, it starts to slowly move back. So like you're fine for like a little bit, but then you don't look at it for a little bit, and then like it's moved enough that you cannot see behind you anymore. And to like reach over and move it back. But anyways.
Well, anyway, let's get on with the show.
Perfect. Okay, so Jackie, what was your go-to or your favorite cartoon growing up?
I was a Nickelodeon kid, and I think Rugrats was my favorite.
Ooh, good
cartoon
choice.
growing up.
That's very 90s. So my favorite cartoon was Scooby Doo. Really, anything Scooby Doo was my favorite. The TV series, the movies, whatever. I had several of the movies, although most of them were not like bought. They were like recorded on VHS from the channel.
Yes. We did that a lot. A lot of my early movies growing up were just taped from the
Yes. That's
trying
so
to get
great.
our money's worth from our VCR.
And then you had to like fast forward through the commercials, but if you were busy doing something, then you like don't realize it, and like you're halfway through the commercials, be like, oh, I can fast forward to this.
Man, good times. Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Oh man, kids today don't know the struggles.
So I guess for those out there who have not been watching any TV for the last 60 years, let us quickly explain what Scooby Doo is. So, this is a cartoon from the mid-century that revolves around a gang of friends and their Great Dane Scooby Doo. The 4 teenage friends call themselves Mystery Inc. and include Fred, Shaggy, Daphne, and Vilma. They are often seen in their van, the Mystery Machine, which is painted in psychedelic colors and flower power images. The original show, Scooby Doo, Where Are You?, had a similar plot throughout all of the episodes. So the gang is usually traveling somewhere when they encounter some supposedly supernatural monster or entity terrorizing an area and decide to investigate. They usually split up looking for clues and suspects, meeting characters along the way, and they always end up being chased by the monster. Let's face it, typically Shaggy and Scooby find the monster first. Eventually, the gang realizes that the paranormal activity is actually a very elaborate hoax, usually to benefit a villain, always one of the characters they've met along the way. They capture the monster or ghost, typically using a Rube Goldberg-type trap designed by Fred, and upon capture, announce that the creature is really a costume-wearing crook, who is using the story of the monster to cover up his or her crimes. The villain is then arrested and taken to jail, usually after saying the catchphrase, and I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for these meddling kids.
Yes, and this formula has proven to work. Scooby-Doo has been a staple cartoon for close to 60 years now. Like Jackie mentioned, Mystery Inc. was made up of 4 teenagers and their dog. So let's take a little bit of a deep dive into who they were. So these characters, the descriptions I'm basing off of the original series, although for the most part, they remain the same for these 60 years. So first off, we have Fred Jones. Fred Jones is the leader of Mystery Inc., primarily voiced by Frank Welker since 1969, when the character was created. Typically, Fred is shown wearing blue pants and a white shirt with a blue collar and a bright orange ascot tie. Usually, he's the one to suggest the gang split up to look for clues and is often paired off with Daphne and Velma, leaving Shaggy and Scooby to be their own group. He's responsible for the creation of the Rube Goldberg traps that are meant to catch the villain, but too often get triggered by Shaggy and Scooby instead, and the villain is caught with some other means. Which I've always found funny because like they went to this elaborate making of the Rube Goldberg, and then like they would have caught it regardless. But anyway, he gains his name from Fred Silverman. He was the head of children programming for CBS. But interestingly, he has 2 first names. So sometimes he's Frederick and sometimes he's Fredward. And I kind of like Fredward. Next up, we have Daphne Blake. She's the second in command of Mystery Inc. She comes from a wealthy family and is based on the teen character of Talia Menninger, played by Tuesday Wield, from the 1950s sitcom The Many Loves of Dobby Gillis. This sitcom is actually where all of the characters from Scooby-Doo are based off. Yeah. She's usually noted for her beauty. She's always fashion forward, wearing purple dress, purple heels, and a purple headband on her red hair. Her father allegedly gave the gang the seed money to start Mystery Inc., and she's often portrayed as clumsy and danger-prone, often with a knack of getting into trouble. and her nickname is actually even Danger Prone Daphne. In many incarnations of the show, Daphne and Fred are shown to share an attraction to each other, sometimes actually dating. Number 3 of the gang is Velma Dinkley. She is the brains of Mystery Inc. and portrayed as the third in command. She's mostly seen wearing baggy orange turtleneck, short red pleated skirt, knee-high socks, and red Mary Jane shoes. And also, she has a pair of black rimmed glasses, which she often loses and then has to find because she cannot see without them.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to the character of Sherlock Holmes, she often finds out the answer to the mystery before everyone else, but keeps her conclusion to herself until the unmasking. She's inspired by the character of Zelda Gilroy, played by Sheila Cool from The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. And some of her running gags include her losing her glasses, like I mentioned earlier, and her catchphrase is, "My glasses, I can't see without my glasses," as she, like, on her knees and hands looking for them on the floor. And often, as Shaggy runs into the room, always kicks the glasses. But anyways, when frightened, Shaggy and Scooby typically jump onto her arms, and she has the catchphrase of Jinkies.
Yep.
There are some inconsistencies and continuity errors with Velma. Sometimes she's mentioned to have attended the same school as the rest of the gang, sometimes not, because at the end of the day, these are meant to be teenagers. She's usually shown in relationships with men. Some of her known partners are Johnny Bravo, like the cartoon, Sam Winchester, and Ben Ravencroft, which was a character in one of my favorite Scooby Doo movies. Anyways, sometimes shown to be attracted to Shaggy, and even in one movie has a son with him.
Whoa.
I know. I did not know that before researching for this episode.
Fascinating.
And the last of the teenagers, we have Norville, or Shaggy, Rogers. He is an amateur detective and longtime best friends with his dog, Scooby Doo. His signature look is a baggy green V-neck shirt, loose maroon or brown bell-bottom pants, and black shoes, which is definitely a costume that I've worn for Halloween in the past.
I figured you would have been Fred more often so you could have an excuse to wear an ascot.
You would think, but no, I had a dog named Scooby Doo.
That's true. You're right.
He constantly uses words like, and his catchphrase is the nonsense word ZOINKS. Some of the running gags that include Shaggy is his love for food and his large appetite. He can be bribed by Scooby snacks, which are dog treats for Scooby, and also delicious graham crackers that you can buy at the store.
Cute.
Often he gets into trouble with Scooby Doo and becomes extremely scared when facing monsters or ghosts. And lastly, we have Scooby Doo himself. So Scooby Doo is a male Great Dane dog and lifelong companion of Shaggy Rogers. His features include a mixture of canine and human behaviors with some level of speech and understanding, usually starting words with an R. His fur is dark brown with black spots and has a signature teal color with rhombus-shaped tag inscribed with an SD. Which, sidebar, I know I'm going to mention later on that I had a dog named Scooby Doo, but he had the teal color with the SD on him.
Good.
So, what's interesting about Scooby is originally, in the original concept, he was a bongo playing sidekick and not a main character. But more on this later. He's treated as a mix of friend and pet by the gang, and often shares many personality traits with Shaggy, mostly being cowardly and hungry. Voice actor Don Messick gave his voice to Scooby for the majority of the character's life until his retirement in 1996. The idea of Scooby-Doo comes from 1968. Really, it comes from Saturday mornings in 1968, because that was the most popular cartoon schedule time, I guess, bracket, if you want to call it that, during the mid-century. After the advent of television, the mornings were filled with action cartoon shows such as Space Ghost, Superman, and Herculoids, most of which were Hanna-Barbera shows, and we'll talk about who Hanna-Barbera were in a bit. But the problem here was that parents were starting to get peeved about these shows being too violent for kids, so networks began to tone back violence with new cartoon shows. The problem was that no new cartoon was as popular or had as high ratings as the earlier superhero style shows. This all changed with the Archie show, which was a series following the musical antics of the popular characters from the Archie comics, which really should be its own show.
I agree. We should do that. Let's add that to the list.
Good. This came out in September 1968 producers from CBS realized after this show's success that they could create more cartoons like it. So, writers from the Hanna-Barbera studios, Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, came up with a cartoon that followed a group of teenagers traveling the country, solving supernatural mysteries while being part-time musicians. Which is very much like Archie's. Joe Barbera and William Hanna, these were the producers. They are the men behind the Hanna-Barbera studios, which brought us cartoons like Yogi Bear and the Jetsons and Space Ghost. They really should have their own episode as well. But
Maybe.
they pitched this show to CBS, and it was originally supposed to be called The Mysteries 5 and featured 5 teenagers, Jeff, Mike, Kelly, Linda, and Linda's brother WW, and their dog, Too Much. This was a dog that played the bongos in the band. The show included a dog to help win over the head of children's programming at CBS, who we mentioned earlier. His name is Fred Silverman, and it was because he liked dog characters. The premise of the show was that the teenagers should be out solving mysteries when not playing gigs, in hopes to duplicate the success of all radio mystery shows.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. The original plan, as presented to CBS president Frank Stanton, included many haunted houses and monsters, but this made it, quote, too frightening for a Saturday morning schedule, according to Stanton. So, Silverman from CBS and Ruby and Spears reworked the show to make it more comedic and less frightening, and thus Scooby Doo was born. Some of the original Mysteries 5 characters were blended or modified, or maybe just renamed. So, Jeff and Mike merged into Fred, Kelly became Daphne, Linda became Velma, and WW was reworked into Shaggy. The dog character was also modified and redrawn by lead designer Iwo Takamoto to be a more goofy-looking Great Dane, to avoid copying Marmaduke.
Was Marmaduke also a Great Dane?
Marmaduke was also a Great Dane.
Interesting.
Yes. He was also revised to be funnier and to be the star of the show. So by the fall of 1969, the show was ready for TV and was christened Scooby Doo, Where Are You? And it was a combination of humor, comedy, and mystery that made the cartoon enjoyable for both kids and also for older demographics.
So, Scooby Doo shows during the mid-century. There's Scooby Doo, Where Are You?, which was the original series. It premiered on Saturday, September 13th, 1969, and aired for 2 seasons until October 31st, 1970, Halloween.
Yes.
Cute. It had a total of 41 episodes. The running time was approximately 21 minutes an episode, and it was originally on CBS, as we mentioned, but then it moved to ABC. It was an instant hit, and the show marked the beginning of a long-running media craze and franchise that extends from animated series to films and even related merchandise. It even inspired Hanna-Barbera to create new series with similar concepts. Yeah, when you said solving mysteries while also being in a band, a lot of these just came rushing into my brain.
Yeah.
So, Josie and the Pussycats, The Pebbles and Bam Bam Show, Speed Buggy, and Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels. We won't go into detail as to the premise of the series since we've already covered that, and all Scooby-Doo related media basically all follows the same formula. The Scooby-Doo theme song is one of the most recognized theme songs in history, aptly titled Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And it was composed by Ted Nichols. It has been featured in many of the franchise's shows and also covered by many genre artists. It starts with a great shot of a ghostly haunted house, and the series logo appears as bats fly around. Scenes from the episodes are featured throughout the opening theme, and the gang even breaks the fourth wall in one scene in the library and looks at the screen.
I love that.
Some theme song trivia. The opening and closing use the song, with one slight difference. The closing has the well-known line, "That's a fact," after Scooby Snacks reference. And in the second season, it's in both the opening and the closing. It has been translated into different languages for international broadcast, and it is often used during chase scenes as well.
I really hope we can play this. If not, if we can't play it for copyright reasons, then everyone go to YouTube or some other online source and do yourself a favor. It's not long. Just watch it.
Yeah, just watch the intro. Oh man, yeah, that'll bring back memories. It must have been a blast researching for this, but just watching
I had
Scooby-Doo
so
for
much
3
fun.
days.
I watched the actual original series.
Good. The next were the new Scooby-Doo movies. So this was the second incarnation of Scooby-Doo, which ran from 1972 and 1973 for 2 seasons, also on CBS and ABC. It premiered on September 9th, 1972, and ran until October 27th, 1973. These are the only hour-long Scooby Doo series, and it ran for a total of 24 episodes. The big differences from its predecessor are each episode included a rotating special guest star, someone that was a real-world celebrity or a well-known animated character, and they joined the gang in solving the mystery. This concept was revived in 2019 in Scooby Doo and Guess Who. Some notable celebrities that were included were Don Knotts, Cass Elliot, Dick Van Dyke, Sonny and Cher, and Laurel and Hardy. Hanna-Barbera characters that showed up were the Harlem Globetrotters, Josie and the Pussycats, and Speed Buggy. Also, the Addams Family and Batman and Robin both appeared on Scooby-Doo before getting their own Hanna-Barbera shows. I think we mentioned that in the Addams Family episode.
They're like spin-offs.
Yeah, I love that. They were like, the Addams Family was actually the Frasier of Scooby-Doo.
Everything is connected in the mid-century.
After this show, CBS aired reruns of the original Scooby-Doo Where Are You series for 2 years, and no new cartoons were produced until 1976, when Scooby-Doo came back exclusively for ABC.
So the new Scooby-Doo movies is technically one of our rule breakers because it technically happened outside of our years, right? 1970s. And there's one more quickly to talk about as a rule breaker, just to keep it all in the 70s. The last mid-century incarnation of the franchise called The Scooby-Doo Show. And yes, again, rule breaker. And this aired from 1976 until 1978 on ABC. I wanted to bring it up because it's interesting in that it's confusing. This show, the first 16 episodes ran as segments of a show called the Scooby-Doo / Dynamite Hour. 8 more aired as part of Scooby's All-Star Laugh Olympics. And the final 16 episodes came out under the same name, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Which was the original title. So if you're watching Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And you see the year copyright 1976, you're not watching the original. You're watching this one.
Interesting.
Yeah. Also, new in this show was a laugh track that was created by the studio to put into the cartoon, which I find hilarious.
Yeah, like because the cartoon's happening in front of a live audience.
Exactly. The plot remains the same, although sometimes we see the addition of Scooby-Doo's cousin, Scooby-Dum. Scrappy-Doo, which is another family member, will join in 1979.
Aw, so he's too late to talk about.
Yeah.
I like Scrappy-Doo.
Yeah, he comes up a little bit later on.
Okay, good. Like, people hate on him for some reason, and I'd love to get your take, but I think he's adorable.
Scrappy-Doo, I just find him annoying.
Aw, but he's so cute and little.
There's a time period in which, like, the Scooby, like in the 80s, Scooby-Doo was Shaggy, Scooby-Doo, and Scrappy. No Velma, Fred, or Daphne. So there's a couple of movies, one of which I watched a lot when I was little, which we'll talk about later. But that one was basically just them 3. And I remember vividly, like, this one was Scooby-Doo and the meets the Boo Brothers. But anyway, there's a scene in which Shaggy's driving this really cool green car that's not the Mystery Machine, but it's like a Ford Bronco style pickup truck with seats in the back that are open. And for whatever reason, this is stuck in my head. But when scared, he like goes, like he pushes the gas pedal. So you see the cartoon pushing the gas pedal, and the gas pedal is the shape of a foot. And I don't know why that always stuck in my mind.
That's really funny. But that's also a really good transition into the connection to today, since all these rule breakers going into the late 70s impact the show in the present.
Yes, so some sort of Scooby-Doo has been part of the media pretty much since the mid-century. Seriously, there's so much of it. Here are some overall stats. There's 13 television series. There's 46 short films. There's 15 animated series, 7 television specials, 6 television films, 39 direct-to-video films, 6 theatrical presentations, and 20 video games that feature Scooby-Doo and or the gang.
Bravo. Way to go, Scoob. That's a great franchise.
Yes. Some of the notable series since the mid-century, so stuff that we haven't already covered, include Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, which is the 4th incarnation of the franchise, and it is the last Hanna-Barbera cartoon series to use the studio's laugh track. This episode was a response to ABC wanting to cancel Scooby-Doo. So the major overhaul included the addition of Scooby-Doo's nephew, Scrappy-Doo, as well as Fred, Daphne, and Velma becoming less essential, eventually removed entirely, like I mentioned earlier.
Interesting.
In the 90s, the eighth incarnation of the franchise, titled A Pup Named Scooby Doo, which actually premiered in 1988, but I watched it in the 90s, came out on ABC. It differs the most from all other series because it revolves around younger versions of the gang as they solve mysteries. Now, this follows a trend of the time of, quote, babyfying cartoon characters.
Yeah. I'm remembering Muppet Babies, and yeah.
Yeah, there were all
that was a
kinds of
thing.
babyfying. I don't know why we thought that was great, but it came out to a great show for the pup named Scooby Doo. This is one of those shows I remember watching when I was homesick.
Aw.
But the base plot is the same. Instead of Mystery Inc., however, we see its precursor, the Scooby Doo Detective Agency, as the gang solves supernatural mysteries in their town of Coolsville. Everything in the show is more comedic. Even the monsters tend to be made as less scary, like a creature made out of molten cheese or a monster that resembles a giant hamburger. Each episode also includes a rock and roll style song during the chase scenes, but the characters are aware of the music and often will dance along with the ghosts or monsters before continuing the chase, which is always one of my favorite scenes. Currently, there is a new-ish show called Velma, which is the most recent incarnation, having premiered in January 12th, 2023 on Max. This is more of an adult animated sitcom that centers around Velma and follows the gang before the creation of Mystery Inc. And it's also the first and only in the franchise to not feature the titular Scooby-Doo. So audience reception was overwhelmingly negative, as it should be for a Scooby-Doo spin-off that does not include the dog. But this was mainly due to the series' departure from the traditional Scooby-Doo format and its foray into alternate universe origin story for Mystery Inc., which also involves a love quadrangle between the four characters.
Yeah, I've heard of this, and I know a lot of people really love it for all the reasons why people who are fans of the original Scooby-Doo would not, probably. Like, there's like a niche group of people who all of the departure from the original are features instead of bugs.
Uh-huh.
So it, like, if you're into this, you're like into it, and if you're not, you're not. Like, that's the vibe I get from the Velma series. I've personally not watched
Yeah, I've
any
never
of it.
watched it.
I didn't know that Scooby Doo wasn't in it at all. Actually, I kind of assumed so. I didn't know that the rest of the Mystery Inc. were in there. Like, I thought it was just Velma and no Scooby Gang at all. But
I hadn't
I've
heard
never
about
seen
it until doing the research. And like doing the research, it's like, oh man, it's interesting. I kind of want to see what it is. But there's so much more like nostalgic Scooby-Doo that I want to watch first.
But there's more than animated cartoons that ran on TV. Scooby-Doo has made it to both animated feature films as well as direct-to-video films. So some notable animated TV and direct-to-video films are Scooby-Doo Meets the Boo Brothers, 1987.
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, 1988. This one I know is super popular. That's the one with the, like, girl monster rock band, right?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
That's the one where Shaggy and Scooby and Scrappy Doo are teachers at an all ghoul girls school. So like the daughters of Dracula and of the Mummy.
Yeah, so I might even get confused. Did they not play music too?
I don't remember. I think you might be considering confusing it with the Hex Girls, which is coming up in 1999.
Oh, rats. Oh, sorry, I'm a decade off. I'm just gonna cut all that out, actually.
No, that's fine. Leave it.
No.
Yes.
Because, yeah, okay, fine, we'll leave it in. It's your episode, whatever. You like it, we'll keep it. Scooby-Doo. Anyway, back to the list. We've got Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, 1998.
I watched so much of that over and over again.
Really?
That was like the first one that I saw that were like real ghosts, real monsters. And for whatever reason, I always loved the fact that Daphne had her own TV show in this one called Coast to Coast with Daphne Blake, and aired on a fictional channel called Americana.
I love how you know all of this. I've seen I've jumped in and out of the Scooby-Doo franchise so much that I don't have the same continuity you do. That's awesome. All right, sorry, we got two more notable animated TV movies to talk about. There's Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost in 1999. And Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders in 2000.
Yes.
And of course, some live-action films too. There are several. The main known ones are the following. There's Scooby-Doo in 2002, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, in 2004, and these are the ones that feature an all-star cast of Freddie Prinze Jr. as Fred, Sarah Michelle Gellar as Daphne, Matthew Lillard as Shaggy, Linda Cardellini as Velma, and Neil Fanning as Scooby. With what? Rowan Atkinson was in this?
Oh yeah, the first one.
As Mondavarius, who is the owner of the resort that the gang go to and investigate.
Yes.
I've seen one of these, but I'm fuzzy on the details. I don't know. Like, I've definitely watched one of this cast movies, probably the first
You
one.
probably watched the first one. They're good movies. I'm not gonna say they're bad. They're good movies because
Are they still good?
You're seeing. Well, that's the thing. They're good movies because you're seeing lovable characters in real life because they're real life people. Now, are they like amazing feats of cinematography? Probably not. But they're amazing, and they do have an all-star cast.
They sure do.
And it's not Huh?
Wait, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's not where Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar met. They met in I think I Know What You Did Last Summer or one of those type movies.
Were they already married when they played?
They
Fred
had
and Daphne?
just gotten married when they played Fred and Daphne. I think it's like their first movie they did as a wed couple.
Cute. Yeah, I kind of remember. I've been meaning to rewatch this for ages, just because the more I see of all of these actors' catalogs, the funnier it is that they're playing these roles.
Yep.
But I kind of remember from the one time I saw this movie, I probably only watched it once, that it was kind of making fun of itself. I feel like it wasn't taking the source material super seriously. I don't know. What do you think?
I think they take it seriously as far as like they are the characters. It's just that the archetypes in Scooby Doo are so like they're very relatable, but they're also very outlandish and very like period. They are mid-century characters. So even if you're watching a live action one and it's set in the present time, these are mid-century people. Or at least they feel like it. Anyway, I think they did a great job. I can't say anything bad against Scooby Doo. But
yeah, I've really like I've watched this movie before I'd seen Scream. So like now I need to go back and watch Matthew Lillard do this. Like I need to go.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like I hadn't watched Buffy yet. And now she's just like Sarah Michelle Gellar is just Buffy in my head forever, no matter what she's doing. And like it'd be really fun to go back and watch it. Like when I watched this movie, I didn't know any of these people, so I need to. It's been on my list for a while.
Yeah,
what a cast.
Do you have a favorite animated series or movie that you think of?
So that's the thing is, most of the Scooby Doo I watched was as reruns. Obviously, on when we lived in Europe, the only channel in English was Cartoon Network.
Mm-hmm.
And so I watched a lot of Hanna-Barbera cartoons, but since I was watching it in the 90s, I feel like the people who scheduled the cartoons at that point just got their entire library and like shook it up and just played it all at totally random non-chronological things. So I have no idea which version of the show I watched. I feel like the version of the theme song didn't have that extra line, so maybe I watched a little bit of the original series, but I also really, really remember Scrappy Doo.
I'm guessing you watched the original and then interspersed with some from the 1980s.
Yeah, I think it was just like all mixed together, and since I was a child, it was all just Scooby Doo to me, and I didn't really notice the nuanced differences. It all just felt like the same cartoon.
Yeah.
But I do know, like, this is a whole, and especially listening to you talk about it, like, this is a whole giant franchise that I feel like I've really barely scratched the surface of. So I've got some catching up to do for sure.
It's great.
So what was your favorite series of all of the ones?
I don't know if I have a favorite. I mean, I love them all. The original, you can't go wrong with the original. Pup Named Scooby Doo. I mean, I really want to I want to stop recording right now to go watch that. But also the animated and direct to video films, like it's so nostalgic to like watch Scooby Doo Meets the Boo Brothers or Zombie Island or The Witch's Ghost, which is the one where they go to New England and they have the Hex Girls, which is like a rock band. Alien Invaders, which was like they're stuck in New Mexico. I don't know. They were all really good. I don't have a favorite. I have all of the favorites.
I love that for you. That's great. Do you think you could rank them, or you love them all equally?
I'll rank the direct-to-video films.
Cool.
Okay, so number 1 has to be Zombie Island, period.
Okay.
After that, I would put Scooby Doo Meets the Boo Brothers, then The Witch's Ghost, then Alien Invaders, then Ghoul School.
Noted. Cool. The Ghoul School one sounds the most interesting to me, but maybe because it seems like I might have watched it.
It's just, to me, the furthest departure from the formula that worked.
Interesting.
But Zombie Island one is my favorite by far.
That sounds familiar too.
Even though it scared me a little bit when I was a little kid.
It being kind of scary, as I think why it sounds familiar, because as you know, I spook easily.
Well, there's a transformation scene in which like the main villains transform into the monster, and it's a real monster, and then there's real zombies, and they have a really great chase scene with music. And their van, the Mystery Machine, is like an actual looking Ford van that you could buy as a car, whereas originally the Mystery Machine is just it could be a VW van, or it could be just a van. So like, to my mind, where like I loved cars growing up, like that was like real, like you could see, and then people would buy these vans after this movie came out, and they would paint them in Mystery Machine colors. So
very cool.
Anyway, it's really exciting to talk about this episode. So maybe we should talk a little bit about why it's persevered, why it's been such a important franchise. Because other cartoons from the same era, indeed even from the same production studio, Hanna-Barbera, have not remained as popular as Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo had strong and relatable characters. We knew what to expect in all the series of the franchise. Fred is always the leader, Velma is always the brain, Daphne is always a damsel in distress, Shaggy is always the comic relief, and Scooby is always the lovable goof and the namesake. Everyone can identify with the archetypes represented in the franchise. They are highly quotable, even if you don't realize it. From its inception, the series has always been a show of relief. Remember, it started as a response to society's anxiety around media violence and its effects. The premise of the show itself is a group of teenage superheroes, right, that fight and then unmask a villain. And it has explained society to many people. There's actually a subreddit I found posing the question, how has Scooby-Doo made a positive impact on your life? And it gives insight on how the series has impacted many people. User Glory to the EU said, quote, "Help me understand that behind every ghost, goblin, and ghoul is just a person, and that the supernatural isn't real, and there is always a logical explanation."
That's a good point. I wish I had taken that advice to heart when I was a child, and maybe I could watch more scary movies now.
User Laxtuden said, quote, "It brings me joy every day, even when I'm feeling down, provides a sense of comfort and security in less than ideal situations." And user Monfernoboy said, quote, "The real part of Scooby-Doo that had a real positive influence on my life is that the plan doesn't always work, but you always still get the same results."
I love that. That's great.
Adults seem to like it because of presumed subversive themes in the show, including drug use and sexuality, both of which are presumed themes and not planned in the original series. Actually, the original creators have taken issue with these themes, denying intended their characters to be drug users in any way. So these are just all like perceived by people. I guess as we got older, we're like, oh, what if they're like this?
We can cut this out, but doesn't Matthew Lillard like actually smoke weed in the movie?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Why do I feel like there's smoke in the van when him and Scooby are eating snacks? I feel like maybe in a cartoon version there even was that. Like,
no, you're thinking of I know what you're thinking of. You are thinking of the scene in Zombie Island when they are eating in the van and they're eating crawfish and cornbread. And when they open up the pot of crawfish, a steam cloud rises up.
Okay. I did have a memory of smoke in a van, but
I can tell you what scene that was in. It's right after they are about to eat in the kitchen, but a ghost appears and carves out the paint on the wall, and it is a board of the ship where the pirate's ghost comes from, and they're too spooked to eat, and then Scooby-Doo goes to the dining room and tries to eat on the table, and the lady owner of the mansion goes, "He's a dog, he can't eat here." And Scooby-Doo's like, "Frog? Where?" Anyway, back to the show. Netflix is currently apparently in productions of a live action series titled Scooby Doo, the live action series. But that's
Ooh,
all I have about that.
intriguing.
There is some cool merchandising. In 1973, Milton Bradley came out with a board game, and since then, 7 more games have come out, including a 2020 game called Betrayal at Mystery Mansion, which is like an expansion slash spin-off of an award-winning game called Betrayal at House on the Hill. There's also decorated lunchboxes. There's coloring books. I have one right now. It's in my cupboard. I'm an adult. The Mystery Machines appeared in many die-cast toys, and I've never owned one. But here's some stats. By 1999, the brand had made $800 million in retail sales, increasing to $1 billion in retail sales by 2004.
Damn.
Licensed merchandise has sold 496 million as of 2015.
Wow, that is crazy. Good for it. Some other accolades besides the money. Scooby Doo, Where Are You? The original series came in as 49th of the UK Channel 4's 100 Greatest Cartoons list in 2005, and it also ranked the 24th greatest cartoon on IGN's Top 100 Animated Series. It received 2 Emmy nominations, one in 1989 and one in 2003. And in 2004, for 1 year only, Scooby Doo held the Guinness World Record for having the most episodes of any animated series ever produced, a record previously held and then later returned to The Simpsons. In popular culture, there's some other references to Scooby-Doo all around, so here are some. The characters of Buffy the Vampire Slayer refer to themselves as the Scooby Gang, and similarly battle supernatural forces and solve supernatural monster mysteries. Love this show. I wish it was in our time period, because I could definitely talk about it for an hour, but oh well. The film Wayne's World features an alternate ending called the Scooby-Doo ending, in which a character of the film is revealed to have been wearing a mask. It even includes the catchphrase, "Let's see who it really is," before the unmasking, and I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for these meddling kids after.
It's so ridiculous, but it's hilarious.
Scooby-Doo has been parodied in many shows, including Futurama, South Park, and Mad, and it even has a crossover episode with CW's Supernatural.
Yes. And it's even made it into Cockney rhyming slang. Cockney rhyming slang recognizes "don't have a Scooby" as a slang rhyme for clue. For those of you who don't know what it is, Cockney rhyming slang is a rhyming slang prevalent among Cockneys in England, first used in the 19th century in East London, or the East End of London. Other examples of Cockney rhyming slang are things like brass tacks for facts, and we're in Barney for we're in trouble. This last one's my favorite because it is based on the Flintstones. It's because of Barney Rubble from the Flintstones. It's like don't be in Barney, like rubble, trouble.
Yeah.
There's also this thing called the Five College Folklore, and this is a popular urban legend that holds that the characters in Scooby Doo represent the 5 colleges. Now, the 5 College Consortium is 4 liberal arts colleges and 1 university in the Connecticut River Pioneer Valley in western Massachusetts. These are Amherst College, Hampshire College, Mount Holyoke College, Smith College, and the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. So the legend is that Velma represents Smith College, Daphne Mount Holyoke, which actually sometimes these two are reversed. Fred represents Amherst, Shaggy Hampshire College, and Scooby represents UMass at Amherst. Now, CBS has made it clear that this is a false legend. Creators Joe Ruby and Ken Spears have been explicit that their characters are based on the characters from The Many Lives of Dobie Gillis, not on the colleges. And I believe either Hampshire or UMass did not exist when this urban legend became known. So,
Yeah, it must be one of those fan theories that came later. That makes sense.
yes. And that's Scooby Doo. Although, one more thing is that I had a dog named Scooby Doo because, of course,
You
I
sure
did.
did.
He was the best dog. He was a Great Dane, and he was fawn colored. And maybe I'll share a picture. He was gigantic. He was 165 pounds. He was amazing and the most beautiful dog ever.
You always wanted a Great Dane named Scooby also.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad that you found each other.
There was, okay, so when I was looking for a dog, when I first got out of college, it's like, I want a dog. Because I've always wanted a dog, and we never had one growing up. So I was like, I'm going to get a dog. And I was like, there's no other, I didn't look around. There was no other option. It had to be a Great Dane. And when I went to go look at dogs, I was looking at a blue Great Dane, but the problem was that the blue was a girl.
Oh.
and I wanted a boy because I wanted a dog named Scooby Doo. And Scooby was the runt of the litter. He was the only one that didn't bark at me whenever I went up to them, and like he was perfect. He was a lap
Aw.
dog.
165-pound lap dog.
Yeah, he was amazing. I miss him.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to post a little Scooby tribute.
Yes. But now that we're caught up to the present, it is time for our etiquette segment. So, Jackie, what do we have today?
My etiquette segment has nothing to do with today's topic and instead finishes my last etiquette segment because I cut this part out for time. 2-3 episodes ago, I did etiquette for like greeting and seeing off your guests when you host events.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that same chapter included like etiquette for the guest on arriving at and leaving that I just cut out for time.
Okay.
So here's the other half of that chapter. Basically, should a guest be called for and how you leave a party, which is useful etiquette. So even though it has nothing to do with today's topic, I wanted to cover it anyway.
Okay.
So this is again from Amy Vanderbilt's Guide to Etiquette. And should a guest be called for? So if a guest is coming to visit to the country and the hostess knows the time of his expected arrival but has said nothing about meeting the train or the bus, then the guest is expected to get to the hostess's home by any available public transportation. The guest does not phone and ask to be met unless some transportation breakdown or great delay has occurred. If the guest is already living in the area, he doesn't ask to be called for unless every conceivable way of getting himself to the hostess's house has failed. If transportation is really a difficulty, the matter should be mentioned at the time that the invitation is tendered. In this way, the hostess may then suggest that the guest be picked up either by someone else coming or by the hostess's own car, but she also has the opportunity of withdrawing the invitation under the circumstances.
Interesting.
Right?
I like that.
And then she added, sassy Amy added this line, certainly the guest who must be picked up and returned by the hostess must be very attractive indeed to justify the inconvenience.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's getting to the party. So now if you're leaving the party, it is never necessary to make elaborate and lengthy excuses for leaving a party. A reluctance to leave should always be known by one's manner or words, of course, no matter what kind of time you had, which is interesting. So basically she's saying, like, always look like you're sad to leave, even if you're not sad to leave.
Oh, man, I can't believe I have to go home and brush my teeth or wash my hair.
Oh, no, you can't say the elaborate and lengthy excuses. Just be like, oh, it's a shame I gotta leave this great party. Or whatever. So yeah, basically she's saying, so one may say, if you're trying to get out of this party, you seek out the hostess first and you say, I'm so sorry, but I must leave now. It has been such a pleasant evening. And if it's still a reasonable hour, your hostess will probably reply, oh, can't you stay a little longer? We hate to have you go. If you really wish to stay after such urging, you can, but you're really under no obligation to, and instead, gently and at least seemingly reluctantly, go on your way again without extra explanations.
I love this.
Even if other guests seem entrenched for the night, your hostess may actually be silently blessing you for your good sense in leaving at a reasonable hour.
Yes.
When a man guest wishes to leave early, he excuses himself to the group in which he finds oneself without stating his intention of leaving, and just goes quietly to the hostess and makes his farewell. If saying farewell to his busy host might break up the party, he may say, do say goodnight to Fred for me, or something like that to the hostess. He is then shown out to the street door by a member of the staff or some member of the family. As we discussed in the last episode, you have a door person.
Yes.
If he is intimate with the family, he will probably see himself off, and the hostess will go with him at least to the door of the living room.
Okay.
An early departing woman guest leaves in the same tactful fashion, except that the host or some other male member of the family must be summoned by the hostess to see her to her car or to her taxi if there's no servant to take her after the hostess has escorted her to the living room door.
Interesting.
And that is the guest half of the etiquette segment. What do you think?
I love it. I think it's great.
I love the idea of like pretending you had such a great time and you're sad to leave for the sake of the host. But now it's making me second guess anyone who's ever come over.
Yes, but also it says the ghost might be silently blessing you, and I'm like, yes, because the host might be like, oh, thank goodness. Like,
Yeah,
if they
maybe now
leave, then
one
people are
person
going to start
left.
leaving too, and I can finally go
Right.
to bed.
But anyway, I love this. I don't know.
It's great. I like it too. I think we should give it the
Okay.
stamp.
Okay, good. Yeah, see, this I knew it didn't match this episode at all, but it was all definitely worth covering. So
I
here we
mean,
go.
you did link it because you said a quote that said, say goodnight to Fred for me.
You're right.
So there
Good
you go.
point.
There's the connection.
There's the connection.
Yes. But it looks like with that, we have unmasked the villain, I should say. Or landed the plane.
Parked the mystery machine.
Yeah, park the mystery machine. So thanks, guys, all for listening today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and tell a friend.
You can also follow us on YouTube and Instagram at MCL Podcast. Instagram is the best place to send us feedback and episode suggestions. Send us a DM anytime. Or you can also contact us through the Send Us a Text Message feature in the show notes.
Yes, so send us some fan mail. And I'm so sorry, but we must leave now. It's been such a pleasant evening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.